Well, for more on all of this, we are joined by Asia Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist, Sourabh Gupta. Thanks for joining us. You heard some of the comments earlier from Sean Caleb's, what he was reporting. Xi Jinping is calling on China right now to elevate itself into a great modern socialist country by the middle of this century. What specifically is he talking about, Sourabh?
He is talking about making China great again, the Chinese dream that he has talked about, and China just coming back to where it always stood in international affairs as being one of the great civilizational societies and nation states in the world. So it's as simple as that.
It is, but already, right now, China has never been, by some analysts' predictions, more respected, stronger, or richer than it is right now. And General Secretary Xi Jinping on the front of The Economist magazine, I don't know if you've seen it right now, as the most powerful man in the world. How did he get to this point?
Well, he is a very charismatic leader. China has done very well for the past 30 years, but I think he will be the first person to tell you that China has a long distance to go still. You know, they have the double centenary goals where they are just looked to be a moderately prosperous society by 2020 and an advanced, modernized society by 2050. He has, by 2049, which is the centenary of the founding of the People's Republic, at this Congress, he has also talked about a 2035 goal where China will basically be a modernized society, though not an advanced modernized society. So he understands—
What is the difference there?
I would assume that by 2050, China would be really #1 in the world. It is already #1 economically by purchasing power parity, but #1 also in terms of bearing international responsibilities, in terms of having a world-class military, which is as good as anybody's, which would probably be as good as the American military, because the US military is very, very good. So, and even societally and culturally, that China would be really one of the great, great societies. When you still have a lot of people in poverty or just in middle income, you really cannot have that sort of advanced cultural and civilizational imprint, not just in Asia, but in the entire world. And he's talking about that sort of a society.
What about the One Belt, One Road initiative, and how will that play into that, getting so many people out of poverty?
It's important because China has shown how it has raised so many people out of poverty in its own country. It's taking that model overseas, not foisting that model on anybody, but taking that model overseas. China's rise in the 21st century is no less than America's rise at the turn of the 20th century. The US came to a particular point at which it became this huge capital exporter and exporter also of investment and managerial skills. China is getting to that point now, and I think President Xi has made the correct evaluation that China is now, being this huge capital exporter, is also in a position to export that model and bring that wealth and prosperity to other poorer countries. And not just to poorer countries, even to middle-income countries who need these sort of investments.
How has the overall foreign policy changed, let's say, over the last 5 years?
I think it has changed remarkably. That has been an area where he has left a very huge imprint. In many ways, President Xi has modeled himself as being a successor to Deng Xiaoping in sort of ushering a new era of reform, ushering a new era like Deng did in the late 1970s, ushering in from going forward from 2020 onwards. One area where he has to some extent broken with Deng is Deng had told China to kind of bide its time. President Xi thinks that it is now time for China to stand up and assume the international responsibilities that US Deputy Secretary of State Robert Zoellick in 2005 had talked about: be a responsible stakeholder. This is part of being a responsible stakeholder, and China is telegraphing to the world that it is ready to do so, and that it is ready to also kind of draw up a modus vivendi by which the US and China can manage their tensions and for the better, so that both countries can cooperate and the world can be a better place.
He has outlined some of his ideas. He says the party will not tolerate corruption. He talks about the country will become more and more open to the world. It will defend its territory in the South China Sea and keep improving the military, which you said is almost unmatched at this point. Are these the ideas fundamental to making China what it is?
Yes, it is. These are various aspects that go into making China what it is. And so he has, on most of these, on all of these fronts, he has already pronounced himself at numerous times during his first term. And so there is going to be that continuity going forward. But one must also understand that power is not, it's not just about hard power. It's also about how you are seen in the world and how you are embraced by the world. And I think President Xi is coming to that point to understand that, yes, China is seen as powerful, but China must also be seen as being responsible, especially at a time when we have countries which are kind of turning inwards and becoming more protectionist. And so from that perspective, he is saying to the world, not what the world can do for China, but what China can do to the world. He's getting to that point. And I think this is something which we should encourage.
All righty. Well, Sourabh Gupta, always wonderful to have you. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time.